burgers and bubblers would be more entertaining, yes.
What's your
And
thought?
that's one of the comments that the landscape architect indicated. I mean, it is a more interactive experience for the visitor if there's something more than a bubbler. So
Right.
they'll interact with each other. The kids will interact with each other a little more too. So
I think we're pretty close then on the playground too. We have the zip line there, the climber, the inclusive spinner, a basket swing. Pretty certain that's where we want to go. Do you all have any other input on that? Any changes? What's our next step, Daryl? Do we invite in a couple of vendors and see what they have to offer and pricing, things like that?
well, I don't think so. I mean, to me, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think where we sort of left it is that we would begin to start thinking about this design in phases and how to phase the project in over some period of time.
Right.
You know, what needs to come first, what should come first, and what should come after that. Once we've, I think, identified the phasing, if we're ready to proceed, I think we need to probably move to the engineering side of this a little bit more to kind of build that piece out.
Absolutely. As a phase plan, as you mentioned, of course, we need to know the phases first, and then we can,
Right.
and there'll be a natural way that will come together so that we're not, doing it out of order for usages.
For example, whether or not the water park is the first thing used, the plumbing for it should be installed before we open the shelter house, or, you don't want to have to mess everything up to dig up to put in water lines after the fact.
Correct. We'll probably want to put in, if not all, most of the underground infrastructure
Right.
in that
Exactly.
first phase to plan for the future phases.
Yeah, and then I think you have this here in front of you, Mr. Martin. I think Dana prepared this. Down to the bottom half of it is the phased approach timeline.
Correct. And this is updated from my previous report. And these phases came directly from Richard Washington
Okay.
of CT. So he did prepare the phasing there in order of how they would come to pass. Phase 1 is the demolition and the mass grading. Phase 2 is the parking lot construction. Phase 3, shelter, walkways, utilities, and small amenities. And then we have 4, 5, and 6, which is splash pad, playground, and pickleball and bike trail. But those can all be done at in any order after phase 3 is completed.
And this is over the course of roughly 2.5 years, right?
It could be, timeline wasn't discussed, so
But based on the
Remember.
grant deadlines and when they're available.
correct. If we're going to pay for the entire project with grants or attempt to at least.
Yeah. I think we have to at least try, right?
The estimated cost is listed as well, and that is based on these numbers that were provided by CT.
Mhm.
So
I did notice this guy, we do have 20% on contingency and we have about 390,000 on survey, design and construction.
Yes, that's all. Yeah. The survey, I included that all in phase 1, the cost of phase 1. The 20% contingency is allocated throughout each phase.
Okay.
What is the success rate of getting some of these grants when you apply for them? Do you have any way of knowing any of that?
I am not a good person to answer that question. I don't know if you have any input on that.
No, no, it depends on the year, how much funding's available, how much competition we've got, and how much they like the project, and it's really hard call to make. I do think that Sunbury, given its reputation and its current growth pattern, will probably rate pretty well.
Yeah, and with regard to the capital budget, grant possibility there, I talked to Frank Rogers, the state rep, and he seemed to indicate that there's a good chance that we might land some dollars there.
That would be the number one, I guess, our most desired grant option. I did want to point out, I was in a meeting earlier last week, and it was mentioned that the state budget passed a new one-time strategic community investment fund for an additional $700 million in the capital state budget.
Say 700?
700 million, yes.
We could find ways to spend. that.
Presumably 700 million extra dollars.
What was the name of that again? How did they fix that?
It was phrased as a one-time, it's actually in that little note up there at the top of your page on the top
There it
right.
is. Okay.
Yeah, it's written there for you.
So there it is right there.
The one-time strategic community investment fund.
And
And
that
it puts an
deadline-
additional 700 million in the state budget.
and that's part of this November 2023
Yes,
application deadline.
correct.
Along with the Land Water Conservation Fund, November 15th.
Yes, and the question was posed during the meeting when to start inquiring about how to apply for those monies. And the recommendation was given probably not until after October 1st would be a good time to discuss with your state legislator, or even the MORPC representative would be able to help with that as well.
When you get a grant like that, how soon do you have to start spending the money to make sure you get the grant?
I think it depends on the grant. Most grants I've seen have been, you need to pay or complete the project within, or at least start the project within 2 to 3 years, and you have,
Oh, okay.
yeah, and you have.
It's not like within a month or
No.
2 months or, yeah, okay.
Right. And the majority of these are all reimbursable grants, meaning that you're not going to get a lump sum money up front. You're going
Right.
to pay for it with funds that you have and then submit for reimbursement.
Okay,
How quickly do they typically reimburse? Within a few months?
I would say within a couple weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. Okay. That's
I guess
good.
depending on the state agency that's running the grant, it could take a little longer, but I wouldn't expect it to be more than a month and a half.
Well, I think the phase-in approach, we definitely have to pursue that. I like the lineup here and the 6 steps and what we're doing with it. Any further comment on that, Daryl or Dan or Dave? Any changes proposed to that?
In all fairness, they're only seeing this for the first time just now, so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the only other thing I think I would add is when Dan kind of ran through the list of, it depends on whether or not you're going to be eligible. I would add to that a local match, probably the more match you provide, probably the better
Right.
your potential.
increases your odds of success.
So I just want to make sure people, it's not likely it gets 100% funded. through
I'm not expecting that. I'd be very happy to get half.
I
We
think
could somehow,
half would be
Go out half.
would be wonderful.
yeah, or even, 30%. I'd be okay with
Well, I
that
was
too.
going to still go with half. So let's.
But I'm shooting for at least that. I'm aiming high, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
But like I said, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think that, the sooner we can kind of land on the design and the amenities, now we really can get to work, I think, a little bit more in terms of, scrubbing the numbers, searching funding, identifying the engineering that needs to be done to kind of move forward. So, and it sounds like we're getting pretty close, I think, to landing on a design. So that's really good news.
What would you propose our next step be, Daryl?
Well, if we think that, we like this,
Assuming we're happy with what Dan has put together
yeah.
and the conceptual plan on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just start to begin to think about tackling the phases then. So maybe with CT's help, we could think about, what would need to be done to, scrub that estimate. What does a mass grading plan look like? What is the shelter? How is it designed? Its location, all of those types of things. So I mean, if we think we're ready to move to that, I assume that's probably where we go next.
I agree, and you're sticking with your scrub theme. I think we want to make sure that we do, as Mr. Martin mentioned, and make sure that we're properly planning it out so that the phasing doesn't interfere with one another and we end up digging up something that we don't need to dig up. And so I'll work with Rich. I hadn't talked to him about that particular part. But that is what we'll do and begin to do a preliminary engineering plan, identifying the proposed phasing, start getting more refined numbers. We'll still have a contingency, but probably will lower and be able to better define things.
Okay.
I also, in that scrubbing numbers, the phasing is fantastic, but each phase tends to be slightly more when you're dividing them apart, like into pieces like that.
Mhm. Okay.
The other thing we should probably need to be thinking about then, so if, so phase 1 is mass grading, demolition, mass grading, whatever. I mean, that essentially is going to take the park offline at that point.
That's right.
So we really do need to think about how it impacts others who are using the park now. So I imagine the lacrosse team would want to begin to have a conversation with them about next year and kind of what spaces are available for them.
Where do we stand with Memorial Day event?
Yeah, I mean, that's another
Gonna
good
have that
example. So,
discussion,
yeah.
I didn't know if any discussion had gone on related to that or,
I mean, we're operating under the assumption that it's still a J.R. Smith Park next year, but again, if it's in the midst of a regrading plan, that could put that up in
right,
the air a little bit. So,
okay.
I mean, right now we've ordered the bleachers for next year.
Just for next year, so, yeah.
They may be down there, they might be over here. Okay. I do want to get some more further comparative analysis from Rich, Dan, if you could, on the two systems.
Okay, I'll do that and I'll have him start putting together, refined numbers and the cost of engineering and phasing and that sort of stuff.
With on the splash pad, like, will the items be motion sensible or will they sense motion and start squirting water? Or will there be a button or a chain somebody has to pull or a button to push to get the water started? Or does it come on in the morning and go off in the evening? What's the deal?
In my experience, the sprayers will come up motion detected, and then some of the other things will be, a button you push, or
Okay,
there's a lot of different options.
right. I just didn't want to see water spraying all the time if nobody's there.
Oh, no,
it-
certainly won't do
yeah.
that.
Be a master on off water supply switch too, where we will only make it active certain hours of the day.
Right.
And then when it is active, it's going to be basically a motion and
Okay.
it'll run for 6 to 7 minutes
All right.
until
That's
it
a good-
rerun.
okay.
That's what they did here. Vortex does.
Right.
That's what they did
Yeah.
in Gahan. So, and it can be a combination too.
Mhm.
Mhm. Okay. All right. I think we know what we're doing moving forward. Any other comments, thoughts? Before we move on? Okay. Let's go to the Daryl's draft for the donation policy.
All right, so I have updated the policy since you last looked at it, as I said I would. So a couple of things to begin with. One is, I think as I indicated to you, Mr. Chairman, that this is written for the parks, but after a brief conversation with the mayor, we may want to expand the donation policy to maybe some other uses in the city. So I kept the title of this for public parks, at least for the purposes of this discussion. Like I said, it may start to move out of this committee and maybe to the broader council for further discussion. So that's issue one. And then the other thing is that I took the Parks Committee out as sort of an approving body as well. What I did is I basically, if we meet a certain threshold, we'll go to City Council for approval on that. So again, whether it's parks related or for some other purpose, it would follow the same path. It just, the donation might be for a different purpose. So.
That threshold, did you increase it, bump that up to 5 or?
Yes, I did increase the threshold. So if you look at the top of packet page 6, it's page 2 of the donation policy. So to level 1, anything that's more than $5,000 is for a term longer than 12 months or involves the naming of a public facility will require the approval of City Council. I'm not sure that there would be many instances in which a name would go on a public facility, but I wanted to leave it there, at least for the time being, as an option. We did, when we worked through with the events committee, the decision-making matrix, again, anything that ultimately results in a name on it would ultimately go to council anyway. So this is consistent with that approach. And then the staff level, actually, that should be 4,999. Sorry. what happens, you know, in that $500 in between? Anyway, so 4,999, or less than 12 months, or 12 months or less, I should say, could be approved by the staff. Now, you know, there are criteria on which staff would approve or disapprove. It'd be consistent with the same criteria we take to council, but it just, you know, involves a lesser amount. And then later in the document, I do say that if staff were to reject a proposal that's within its threshold, the prospective sponsor could come to council and appeal it to council. So you may say, we think that's a great idea and you should do it. So
would you do me the favor
Mhm.
of defining in here what you mean by staff? Because the way you're saying, if the guys from the street department decide they want to approve something, they can.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I assume that was the administrator or designee, if you guys designated someone else,
Right,
but I can be more clear about that.
Yeah.
So,
please.
And did you say Mr. Mayor's reviewed this too?
no, I just talked to him that we were working on a donation policy.
Okay.
And I talked to him in the context of some other issue and he said, you know, maybe the city considers donations for that going forward. And that's kind of how this conversation
Let's assume that,
shifted a little bit.
let's assume that this board here is okay with what you put together. Do you propose to take this document to council next, Daryl?
Well, I really
Mr.
need to
Mayor,
work it through the legal side now. I need to, yeah. Bream hasn't seen this version yet, so I would want to start talking to him about
Yeah.
this document.
If we're bringing it to council,
Yeah.
we should have him weigh in on
Right.
it, I think, yeah.
Exactly.
Let's have him do that next.
Yeah.
I think the changes you made were appropriate. Everything else seems spot on. It's the same as the last, right? Last version, except for the items you discussed.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, mostly.
So then he can scrub it and then would you bring it back here or have the mayor? take it?
Well, I was gonna say at that point, let me talk through it with the mayor a little bit more. And again, if he thinks he wants to create a single donation policy for the city, then again, we'll work it through council. I mean, that may end up going through the finance committee for, you know, getting everybody educated on it before we take it to council. So,
Okay.
okay.
Anything further on that, Mr. Martin? Okay, thank you, Daryl.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to new business. We have a special event permit here, Sizzling Sounds.
Yeah, it's coming up.
That's come up quick. Couple more weeks.
I was gonna say 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Hard to believe. So again, this takes place on a public park here on the square. You know, Sizzle and Sounds probably as well as anyone sitting over on this side of the table. The time of the event, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's the same time as has been done in the past. It does require the closure of 3 city streets. So I've got on the council agenda tonight to authorize the closure of the streets. So you've got Vernon, you've got Granville, and you've got this portion of Columbus.
Columbus, yeah.
Same as last year, right?
Same as last year.
Okay.
I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything they talked about that looks and feels different. In terms of trash collection, they are going to maintain that, I think, through a private vendor this time as opposed to volunteers. So we'll see how that goes. We do provide the trash or a dumpster for them. We'll have so you'll have food vendors, we'll have the stage, we'll have performance, we'll have alcoholic sales in the beer garden. You'll have a kid zone and we'll have a vendor section as well.
So we
yeah,
have the same robust security personnel that we had last couple of years.
Last time, yes. Yes, they are meeting with the chief separately to go over that. They just told me that this week.
Okay.
So we'll confirm that. There was a question about maybe trying to get Mr. Martin, it might be it might have been you, asked if we could get the, where they serve the alcohol so that it doesn't block the sidewalk. I've talked to them about that. They actually may have a different provider of alcohol this year, so it might alter, the trailers that they're bringing. We do have the updated electric on the square, so there'll be less demand for electric than there has been in the past from generators, but they will still be bringing generators in for the event. The expectation is to close the streets the Friday night at 5 p.m. so that the vendors will, the food vendors will get staged. And then I'm not sure what time, I think they set up, I should have asked this question. When did they set up the beer garden fencing? Is that on Friday?
Yeah.
Or the morning? I thought it was, yeah, we'll confirm that because that would actually affect the closure of that street.
Looks like they're gonna have 2 shuttles again, right? Isn't that what they did last year?
They did, and they sent me the schedule, they sent me the route. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, so shuttles run every 20 minutes. The drop off and pickup spot is over here near the municipal building. Yeah, so one of them runs from the old high school or the new middle school, right? Sunbury Meadows Pool parking lot, Sunbury Christian Park, Fox Creek Pool. And the other one is running from the Big Walnut Grill, PJ's Family Restaurant, Clifton Court behind McDonald's, and the Sunshine Preschool. There will be a charge for people on the bus. I think they're looking at $2 per person each way. Yeah, other than that, I think that's it.
You need our approval, official approval for the permit.
Well, I think we just need that, the consensus that you approve the use of the park for that purpose on that day.
Agreed here. Mr. Martin, any objections? Other concerns?
Any objections to the use of the
No,
town square for that purpose? Okay. Like I said, we'll have the vote on the,
just so the beer stays in the beer garden.
well, we have talked to them a little bit more about, I know it's a challenge every year, but we have talked to them a little bit more about maybe altering the access points. See if we could move it maybe a little bit away from a place where they might be handing alcohol over the fence.
Right.
So that's, again, one of the things they're going to talk to the police about. The event organizer.
That's always a challenge.
I see we got the Reaganomics here as a headliner in the evening. This is like their last year.
I've been told, yeah.
A pretty big deal.
Remember the Reaganomics? Dave?
You remember the
I
80s
was
music?
checking ideas. I don't pay attention to the music.
The 80s music band.
Big 80s, that's my time. And old
It's my ear.
timers.
Yes, okay, all right. I think that's anything else there?
No.
Okay. Let's go on to other park updates. So South Columbus Street, the Pocket Park demolition, that's about to take place, right?
That's the one over here. So we've moved the documents out of the building. The electric will be turned off on Monday. I had a follow-up conversation with the demo contractor. Thought he was going to be here next week. He actually is going to be here. Turns out it's going to be the week of the 14th, but he will be done.
What was Delco doing out there yesterday?
I'll get that in just a second.
Okay.
They'll start on the 14th. They guarantee they'll be done before the weekend. I told them they need to be out of here on Friday because sizzle's coming in.
And part of that finished product is some gravel, right?
There's
So
some
people
gravel,
can
yeah.
actually maybe park there.
Right. People will be able to park there now. We probably need to figure out some striping, a plan or something. So it's not completely out of control, but yeah, I mean, it'll be used for parking, available for parking. As far as Delco, they were here yesterday. The fire hydrant, maybe a month or so ago sprung a leak. And so they had turned it off. It was out of commission. So they were here just to repair the fire hydrant over there.
It's now,
completely unrelated.
it's now operable,
I think so. I don't know. Did you notice? Yeah,
Yeah.
I
All
think
right,
so.
well, I hope they can be done in 3 or
Yeah.
4 days. Monday to Thursday.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a pretty big job.
yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's smaller than the other job that they did where they took down 2 houses and had to haul in a whole bunch of soil and had to put in grass seed and what have you. And that was about a 2-week project for them. So,
All right. That's encouraging. Then we gotta put on our next park agenda, the redo plans for that.
yes,
for that
so
park.
Dan has started to think a little bit about that, so we can.
And
begin to-
please include into that, Dan, the other pocket park. What we can do about that interior green space.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Reservoir Park update. How are we doing there?
We are still in the process of design. Pretty far along, kind of talking about phasing plans to make sure and how to properly demolish some of the infrastructure, the appurtenances that are under the under the parking lot there that used to be a part of the old water plant. Bit of a challenge. So we're looking at that and starting to run through some cost estimating.
ODNR did agree to what we wanted to do there, right? With the phasing.
You mean as far as having the sewer?
Yeah,
Yes, it's
change.
two different divisions of ODNR. But we're gonna combine it as one plan so that, as Dana had said earlier, we need to make sure we start it by a certain date. We'll include that as part of the project plan, so we'll have said we started, but we've got to get that water line in before we mess with the parking lot and do some of that other work. We could also do the docks at the same time, I suppose, but yeah, it's in process and
Aren't we up against the deadline for grant money?
we are up
Gotta
against
start
that. We have
something.
to start by the last of December before 2024.
And we're still okay there. We can,
I hope so. That is my plan.
okay. We just gotta break ground, right?
That's exactly right, yeah. But in order to do that, we've got to go through the bid process and select a contractor.
Okay, we gotta be bidding by when, do you think? October?
Late October, early November.
I will add, if you've been out there, we have, Dan had done a site inspection probably related to this. You probably have noticed one of the access ramps to the, whatever those things are called.
They call them gatehouses, it's the
Gatehouses,
outlet
yeah.
structures.
So one of those has been closed off for safety reasons. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
All right, very good. Healthy Living Grant update.
What does that mean?
Last item on our other park updates.
Well, we have the bike racks ordered. There's 4 of them coming. They should be here by September 8th. I met with Adam today. We are putting together a plan to get the benches ordered and then installed. We have to put concrete pads down for those because they're all access and they'll have an extra pad area so you can park a wheelchair next to it.
Have we identified a location for those two? Or do we need to do that?
We have, Adam's double checking because we'd like to put one near the municipal offices.
Mhm.
And then on. I'm backwards, the side. Yep, on this side, there isn't a stationary bench over here along this walkway, but there is on this side. So we were gonna place one over here as well.
Okay, balance it out.
Yeah.
And one over there and on that corner on
Yeah.
the same parcel where
I
the
was telling
building
you,
is.
When we
Okay.
have that street shut down, there's a lack of seating. So if I can add some seating where people get food from the food trucks and sit to eat. And there's a nice shade tree right there, so.
So just to be clear, that second one she's describing is not on the square. That one is on the other side of.
On that parcel of land where the building sits.
The
Yes,
city building sits at the moment. Yeah.
yes, we're gonna
So
double
just kind
check
of in the front.
to make sure there's enough room. That way it can be ADA and everything can be set, but he thinks we can put it there.
That sounds good. Any comment on that, Dave?
No, sounds good.
Excellent. September 8th, you'll have
The
them.
bike racks, yeah, they're
Okay.
being custom made.
What about those locations?
There is gonna be one at the gazebo. That's a set one. We have a lot of bikers that come through that rest in that area.
Okay.
And then I guess it's up for discussion where the other three.
Let's put that on the agenda next parks meeting, okay? I'll be looking around too. If you guys could look around
Yeah.
and,
'Cause there are some bike racks out here, so we just kind of want to space them out a little more. And they sit parallel with the park, the sidewalk, so they can be placed on or near a sidewalk, so. They're really neat.
great, and that's paid in full, right? Full reimbursement.
That's the full reimbursement from them.
Are those the only two components of that grant?
Well,
There's
the
wayfinding.
wayfinding, which I'll get with Alyssa, and we have to kind of map out where to put the wayfinding signs.
I'm glad you brought that up. I've seen some social media posts on the Pres Parks and OTET trail sites about they're coming off over here and coming into town,
Okay.
you know, behind Tommy Hatfield's place and not really knowing how to get back
Where the
over there.
train Depot is.
Yeah, so I think we need some here on Columbus, and we need one, you know, going down here on Cherry.
Mhm.
If we don't already have something there,
I'll have to look. I know we have a couple around here, but
that's part of the grant, isn't it?
yes.
They're
those
not all
signs.
that expensive. What do they cost? Any idea, Dan?
You're talking about the signs?
Yeah, the little bike signs.
Oh.
Yeah, they're not very expensive.
Not real expensive. Depends on if you want to get fancy with the posts or any of that kind of thing.
I want to, you know, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. I want to be as clear as
Yeah.
clear can be.
With that trail open, the amount of people coming through right now has doubled over where we live. So, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, okay. All right, very good. Anything else? Unfinished or new business, old business, Mr. Martin?
I don't have anything to bring up.
Okay, Daryl, Dan, Dana? Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Martin. I will second.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr.